Or at least directed.
For people who don't know the sort of, I'll give a little bit of the story of Namaste Man, which, not the story of the actual show, but of how it came to be something we decided to do here. It really came about when we were doing Three Sisters 2 years ago, 3 years ago now. In the middle of Three Sisters, Andy said, I've written this piece and I'd like to do it for everyone on a Monday. And we'd already put the show up, and we were in performance, I believe. And so we got the company together, and we thought, oh, cute, it'll be sweet, we'll be nice, we'll humor him, it'll be fine. And so he did this very unbelievably beautiful piece, which the entire company of Three Sisters completely loved, and about his experiences growing up in Nepal. And it was sort of like a whole other person took over Andy, and he became this amazing storyteller who then told the story of his own growing up in Nepal. Later on, we were approached to write a grant by a group called the Fox Foundation, which we'd applied for before. Kristen got a Fox Foundation grant that we applied for 3 or 4 years ago. Lori Larson, we applied for a Fox Foundation grant, and she got one. So we were sort of familiar with it, and it's a grant specifically for actors to do development. To make a long story short, we went through a very rigorous process of applying for Andy, and then last fall he received his Fox Foundation grant and then went back to Nepal, where you had not been since you were
Almost
13 years old.
34 years.
So 34 years later, we sent him back to Nepal, where this story originated, to look at it again, to go back through where he was, to complete the sort of writing, not to change the writing, but to finish the whole story, and at the same time did some studying of Kathakali and Indian theater and a whole bunch of
I was nominated for this, Bart nominated me for this thing, and the process of getting it was so rigorous, and really, it was great because it kept making me kind of try and figure out what the thing is, you know, as you have to try to explain it to other people, which I'm slowly getting better at, but I still am not very good at. And I went back and in the fall, and it was one of those experiences. I mean, it was just an incredible, you know. Thomas Wolfe says you can't go home again, but you know, you can get pretty close. It was a really amazing experience. And, one of the things that's in the piece, and that I want to have in the piece, and that is why Bart is a perfect person for me, in my opinion, to direct it, is that there's a real contradiction in it. You know, it's a little American kid growing up in the most exotic place you can imagine, but the main events of the thing are not exotic events. It's our mom disappears for a few weeks. It's I'm in a play, and that's not even that interesting, except that one night I come on stage at the wrong time, and that becomes a crisis. Or, you know, I meet this guy in a coffee shop while I'm looking for the rehearsal of a play, and he's just like this little Nepali guy who's selling things in New York. Like, those are the real events of the play. And the exotic, magnificent Himalaya mountains, Namaste, all that stuff is the bowl that it sits in, but the actual events of it are, I think, are small events that in the fullness of time seem big, and so there's this duality in the play between this thing that, you know, we have this notion in America or in the West of the kind of the spiritual grandeur of this part of the world, Nepal and India and all this stuff, and there's a lot of stuff in the play that kind of works against that. For instance, I brought props. Here's the two props that I think sum up the play. One is this cowbell from Nepal that was actually bought off of a little, off a water buffalo in the, well, the little boy who was holding the water buffalo. So that was that I bought. And then when we came back to America, the first thing I bought, one of the first things I bought was my famous Washington Redskins knit cap. So these two things are the play, in my opinion, you know? These things. And they both are magical objects to me. They're both spiritual objects, and they're both kind of silly. This is a stupid bell on a cow, and this is thing that my mom bought at the sporting goods store. And that's the play to me. There's these things. There's contradictions inside everything. Like you think this thing's going to happen, and then the opposite actually happens. You think this is really magical, and this. Like I'm sitting on the side of the mountain, this incredible, beautiful, bucolic thing. I'm 10 years old, listening to the birds and everything, and this old Sherpa man comes up to me, and he shows me a picture of a beautiful girl, and then he offers to, it's his daughter, and he wants me to, like, fuck her. Like he's pimping his daughter. And, I'm waiting for this man because he's played college football and he's coming to our Thanksgiving house and everything like that. And he finally shows up, and he actually kind of turns out to be a little bit of a dick. But on the other hand, or I'm in this play and it's kind of like I'm doing this thing and it's good and all these adults are paying attention to me and it's kind of fun and everything like that. And it would have been an ordinary event, except I screwed up and I came on at the wrong time. And this man, this Indian man who was directing the play, showed me the way to make it better. And like the expectation comes around to the other side. And so all these years later, I'm looking at it and I kind of go, well, that's kind of Eastern. There's something sort of Eastern about that, or there's something kind of yin and yang, or something about that. What else? So those things exist completely in opposition, and I hope in all the play. That there's this, I was in the most exotic place in the world, Shangri-La, and what I was dreaming about was being an American kid sitting in a class in social studies, listening to the teacher talk about the distant land of Nepal. That's what I was dreaming of. Like that was to me what was exotic. Was living on a yard that had a lawn, that had cut grass, and and going to McDonald's and seeing Gilligan's Island. That would be fantastic. And I was living next door to a leper colony in Kathmandu. Like those contradictions are in there, and they exist, I think, simultaneously and equally strongly throughout the piece.